Ayla Morgan pressed her palm against the warm metal door of the taxi and stepped into the thick Atlanta heat. The sun had just dipped below the skyline, painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and fading gold. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. She took a slow breath, trying to ground herself. For the last 2 weeks, she had been in rural Alabama, sleeping upright in an old recliner beside her mother's hospital bed. Her mother had suffered a sudden medical emergency, one that nearly took her life. Ayla hadn't left her side once. Today was the first day the doctors finally said the word stable. Today, Ayla could finally go home. She pulled her suitcase behind her as she entered the polished marble lobby of Crestview Towers, the luxury high-rise she and her husband, Victor Hale, had lived in for nearly 10 years. Crystal chandeliers glimmered overhead. The scent of fresh lilies filled the air. This place had once felt like success. Like safety. Like hers. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt longer than usual. Ayla leaned against the mirrored wall, exhaustion weighing down her bones. When the doors finally opened, she let out a quiet sigh of relief. Home. She stepped toward the door and tapped her key fob against the digital lock. Beep. Red light. She frowned and tried again. Beep. Red light. Her heart skipped. That's weird, she whispered. She rang the doorbell. Seconds passed. Then footsteps. The lock clicked. The door opened, and the man standing there barely looked like the husband she remembered. Victor Hale wore a silk robe she had never seen before. His face was cold, unreadable. And on his neck, unmistakable against his skin, was a fresh smear of dark red lipstick. "You're back early," he said flatly. Ayla felt the air leave her lungs. "Victor, why isn't my key working?" "Because I changed the locks." The words hit her like a slap. Before she could respond, a woman stepped into view behind him. Young. Confident. Perfectly styled. She was wearing Ayla's favorite satin robe, the one she bought on their anniversary. The woman smiled slowly. "Oh," she said. "So you're the ex-wife." Ex-wife. The word cut deeper than any insult ever could. Victor stepped into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind him, leaving the woman smirking inside the penthouse. "We're done, Ayla," he said calmly. "Everything in that apartment, every dollar, every asset, is in my name. You came into this marriage with nothing. You're leaving with nothing." The hallway suddenly felt colder than the night outside. Ayla couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Victor raised his hand and motioned toward the end of the hall. Building security approached. "Please escort her out," he ordered. And just like that, Ayla Morgan lost her home, her marriage, and the life she believed was still waiting for her upstairs. The glass doors of Crestview Towers closed behind her with a soft hiss. The city noise rushed back in, cars, laughter, music, but everything sounded distant, muffled, like she was underwater. She tightened her grip on the handle of her suitcase. It was the only thing she had left. She walked without direction, past glowing restaurants and couples holding hands, until she reached a quiet bench near Centennial Park. Neon lights flickered on the pavement. People laughed. Everyone belonged somewhere. Ayla felt invisible. Her stomach growled. She opened her wallet. One crumpled bill. $9. Not enough for food. Not enough for a motel. Not enough for anything. Her phone buzzed weakly. Battery, 5%. She opened her banking app. Balance, $0. Every shared account was empty. Even the small savings she had tucked away before marriage, gone. Victor had taken everything. Her hands trembled as she searched her wallet again. That's when she saw it, tucked behind an old photo of her father. A faded debit card. Her breath caught. Her father, Edward Morgan, had given her that card when she was 18. "Keep this for emergencies," he had said. "Only use it when you have nothing left." Tonight, Ayla finally understood what he meant. Ayla sat on the cold metal bench near Centennial Park long after the city lights fully came alive. The night had grown cooler, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts were louder than the traffic rushing past. 10 years. 10 years of loyalty, compromise, and quiet sacrifices, erased in less than 5 minutes. She looked down at the faded debit card again, rubbing her thumb over the nearly invisible logo. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, steady and calm, the way it always had been. "Only when you have nothing left." Ayla exhaled slowly. This was it. Nothing left. She stood and began walking as the sky slowly shifted from black to deep blue. When the sun finally rose, she found herself standing in front of an old stone building squeezed between two modern glass offices. Morgan Federal Bank. She remembered this place. Her father had brought her here years ago. Back then, she thought it looked boring, outdated. Today, it felt like the last solid thing in a world that had collapsed. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and dust. The lobby was quiet, too quiet. Only 2 tellers worked behind the counter, and 1 young employee sat at a small customer service desk. Ayla approached him and gently placed the old debit card on the desk. The man glanced at it, then at her tired face. His name tag read Lucas. "Good morning," he said kindly. "How can I help you?" "I need to check the balance on this card," Ayla replied. "It's very old. I don't remember the PIN." Lucas picked up the card, turning it over slowly. His eyebrows lifted. "Wow, this card must be at least 20 years old," he said. "I'm not sure our system will even read it." "Please," Ayla said quietly. "Just try." Lucas nodded and typed the numbers into his computer. The screen beeped. He frowned and tried again. Another beep. "That's strange," he murmured. "It's not showing up. The account might be archived. Give me a moment." He clicked into a different system. Lines of green text scrolled rapidly across the screen. Ayla held her breath. Lucas suddenly froze. His face drained of color. He whispered, barely audible. "Please stay right here." Before she could ask anything, he hurried toward an office in the corner and knocked quickly. A tall man with silver streaks in his hair stepped out. The nameplate on the door read Samuel Whitman, branch manager. "What is it, Lucas?" Samuel asked, clearly annoyed. "You need to see this," Lucas said, pointing back at the screen with a trembling hand. Samuel followed him, irritation written across his face, until he saw the monitor. His expression shifted instantly. Confusion. Shock. Then disbelief. He looked at Ayla. He said slowly, "Are you Ayla Morgan, daughter of Edward Morgan?" "Yes," she answered cautiously. Samuel exhaled deeply, as if steadying himself. "Please come with me," he said. "We need to speak privately. And I'm going to close the bank." Ayla's heart pounded. Inside Samuel's office, the blinds were drawn shut. Lucas stood silently by the wall. The door clicked closed. "Ayla," Samuel began, lowering his voice, "your father didn't leave you a simple savings account." He turned his monitor toward her. "This card is linked to a master account, one that controls a corporation. Ayla blinked. A corporation. Morgan Crest Group, Samuel continued. Founded in 1999. Her head spun. Her father had been a quiet man who sold farm equipment and managed small land holdings. Nothing about him screamed corporate empire. Samuel scrolled through documents, property deeds, investment portfolios, business registrations, all labeled inheritance activation. Your father spent over 20 years building this, Samuel said. Farmland, agricultural shares, long-term investments. But there was a condition. He paused. The account only activates when your personal balance reaches zero. Ayla's breath caught. That happened yesterday. Everything clicked into place. Her father hadn't predicted Victor's betrayal, but he had prepared for the possibility that one day, she would be left with nothing. Lucas stepped forward and handed her an envelope. He asked us to give you this when the account activated, he said softly. Inside was a handwritten letter. My girl, if you're reading this, you've reached the edge. Don't be afraid. Don't shrink. Build something of your own. This isn't a gift, it's a beginning. Ayla folded the letter carefully. The fear inside her didn't disappear, but it hardened into focus. She looked up at Samuel. Tell me what I need to do, she said calmly. I want to activate everything. Now? Ayla stepped out of Morgan Federal Bank with a thick folder tucked under her arm and a calm she hadn't felt in years. The morning sun felt different now, lighter, almost welcoming. Just hours ago, she had nothing. No home. No money. No plan. Now she had something stronger than all of that. Clarity. She didn't linger outside the bank. The first thing Ayla did was disappear. She walked 2 blocks and bought a prepaid phone with cash. A new number. No connections. No history. Then she paid for a simple outfit at a nearby store, jeans, a clean blouse, comfortable shoes. Clothes that didn't belong to the wife Victor had discarded. She checked into a small hotel under a different name and finally took a long, hot shower. As the steam filled the room, the weight of the last 24 hours washed off her skin. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel, she sat on the edge of the bed and opened the folder Samuel Whitman had given her. Ownership records. Business filings. Land valuations. The numbers made her dizzy. Her father hadn't just saved money. He had built infrastructure, farmland tied into regional agricultural networks, long-term investment instruments, and corporate structures designed for growth, not attention. This wasn't survival money. This was power. By the time night fell, Ayla had read every page twice. One name appeared repeatedly in the notes Samuel had included. Daniel Knox. A private financial strategist. Industry nickname, the Architect. A man known for rebuilding companies from the ground up, or dismantling them completely. The next morning, Ayla walked into a sleek glass tower in Midtown Atlanta. Daniel Knox's office was minimalist. Clean lines. Neutral colors. Nothing wasted. The man himself looked much the same. Late 30s. Rolled sleeves. Sharp eyes that measured more than they revealed. He glanced up when Ayla entered. You have 10 minutes, he said calmly. What do you need? Ayla placed the folder on his desk and met his gaze. I'm not here to survive, she said. I'm here to understand exactly what I own. Daniel opened the folder. 5 minutes passed. Then 7. His eyebrows lifted slightly. This isn't small, he said finally. Some of these assets have tripled in value. Others haven't been touched in years. I want everything reviewed, Ayla replied. Every asset. Every contract. And I want to learn. Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. Most people with wealth like this want shortcuts. They want me to do the thinking while they enjoy the results. I lost everything yesterday, Ayla said quietly. I won't ever let that happen again. For the first time, Daniel smiled, just slightly. Then we begin today. The next 2 weeks blurred into a storm of work. Ayla spent long days in conference rooms, studying land maps and financial statements. She learned how her father's farmland connected to larger agricultural supply chains. She absorbed contract law, risk analysis, and investment strategy. Her mind sharpened. You're not just learning, Daniel said one evening as they reviewed projections. You're transforming. And he was right. The woman who once waited for Victor's approval no longer existed. While Ayla rebuilt, Victor Hale believed he was winning. He and Nina Cross had fully taken over the penthouse. Champagne bottles lined the counter. Designer bags cluttered the bedroom. Victor bragged openly about his newest project. There's land opening up in South Georgia, he said one night, swirling wine in his glass. Thousands of acres. Whoever controls that development will own half the region. Nina barely looked up from her phone. Sounds expensive, she said. Does that mean we can finally plan the Miami wedding? Soon, Victor waved her off. First I need investors. He paused, thinking. I heard a new player just entered the Atlanta market. Quiet. Cash heavy. Nina glanced up. Who? Morgan Crest Group, Victor said. They've been buying land aggressively. I'll pitch them my project. They'll back me. What Victor didn't know was that the land he wanted was already Ayla's. Within days, Victor's assistant contacted Morgan Crest Group requesting a meeting. When the invitation arrived, Victor grinned at his reflection. Finally, he muttered. Someone recognizes real talent. He had no idea the meeting wasn't admiration. Victor Hale arrived at the mansion in Cascade with the confidence of a man who believed the world still belonged to him. The iron gates opened slowly, as his car rolled down the long driveway lined with towering oak trees. The property alone screamed power, quiet, old money, and control. What Victor didn't know was that the woman he had thrown out like discarded luggage now owned every inch of it. Inside the foyer, a sharply dressed assistant greeted him with a polite nod. Good afternoon, Mr. Hale. The CEO will meet you shortly. Please wait in the library. CEO. Victor felt a surge of pride. Whoever this investor was, they were about to hear the pitch of a lifetime. The library was massive. Floor-to-ceiling shelves. A long mahogany table. The air felt different in here, deliberate, heavy, intentional. At the far end of the table sat a man reviewing documents on a laptop. Victor extended his hand. Good afternoon, sir. Victor Hale. The man didn't shake it. Consultant, he replied calmly. Have a seat. The CEO will join us shortly. Victor sat, adjusting his tie. Something about the room made him uneasy, but he ignored it. Minutes passed. Then the doors behind him opened. He heard heels first. Measured. Confident. Every step cut through the silence like a blade. Apologies for the delay, a familiar voice said. Victor turned. His breath stopped. Standing at the head of the table was Ayla Morgan. Not the woman he'd dismissed in the hallway weeks earlier. This Ayla stood straight, composed. Her hair was sharply styled. She wore a navy dress that carried authority, not apology. Her presence filled the room. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hale," she said calmly, taking her seat. "I'm Ayla Morgan, CEO of Morgan Crest Group. Thank you for coming." Victor opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "Please," Ayla continued, "begin your presentation. I understand you're eager to discuss development on land that belongs to my company." The room tilted. Victor fumbled with his slides, words tripping over each other. Numbers spilled out too fast, too polished, too desperate. Halfway through, the consultant finally spoke. "Your projections are inflated," Daniel Knox said coolly. "Your risk analysis is incomplete. And your cost estimates ignore regional labor volatility." Victor felt sweat gather at the back of his neck. "Ayla," he said quickly, forcing a smile. "We can talk privately. This is all a misunderstanding." Ayla leaned back, expression unreadable. "There's no misunderstanding," she said. "You wanted a meeting with the CEO. Here I am." In that moment, Victor understood. The game had changed, and he wasn't holding the rules anymore. The meeting ended without a deal. Victor walked out shaken, his confidence fractured. Ayla didn't watch him leave. She turned to Daniel. "Phase 2, she said simply. Back at the mansion, Daniel opened a spreadsheet. 12 suppliers, he said. Total outstanding debt. About $450,000. "These are the people Victor stalled for months," Ayla said quietly. "Some nearly shut down because of him." Daniel nodded. "I've set up 3 shell companies. We'll buy every debt outright." "Do it," Ayla replied. "And make sure every supplier knows they're being paid because someone values their work." Within days, Daniel's team traveled across the region. Certified checks were handed over. Invoices settled in full. Some owners cried. Others stared in disbelief. Meanwhile, Victor enjoyed the silence. "No calls," he bragged to Nina. "Looks like they finally understand who they are dealing with." What he didn't know was that every debt he owed now belonged to Ayla. When Daniel returned, he placed the transfer documents on the table. "It's done." Ayla ran her fingers across the top page. She wasn't interested in revenge. She wanted accountability. That evening, Victor called her. His voice was softer now. "Careful. Can we talk?" he asked. "Dinner?" Ayla agreed. Not out of nostalgia. Out of strategy. The restaurant smelled of truffle butter and polished wood, the same upscale place where Victor Hale had once knelt down and promised forever. The memory felt distant now, like it belonged to another woman's life. Ayla arrived on time, calm and composed. Victor was already seated. He stood quickly, pulling out her chair with exaggerated politeness, as if they were still a couple sharing a future built on trust. "You look incredible," he said, forcing a smile. She didn't respond. He ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without asking, filling the silence with nervous chatter. "I've been under a lot of pressure," Victor began. "I made mistakes." Nina meant nothing. "You were busy with your mother." "I felt alone." Ayla listened quietly. "So this was my fault?" she asked evenly. "No, no, of course not," he rushed. "I just lost my way. But seeing you again reminded me of what we had. We can fix this." She leaned back slightly. "Maybe," she said. "But let's separate personal matters from business." Victor blinked. "Come to my office tomorrow at 10, Ayla continued. "Bring your full company ledger." Relief washed over his face. The next morning, the mansion felt colder. Daniel Knox stood beside Ayla, 3 thick binders stacked on the table. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," Ayla said. "Let's begin." Daniel opened the first binder. 12 suppliers. $450,000 in unpaid invoices. "I'm negotiating with them," Victor said defensively. "They can wait." "They are not waiting," Ayla replied. "They've been paid." Victor froze. "Paid by who?" "By Morgan Crest Group. Which means your debts now belong to me." Daniel slid the second binder forward. "These are the transfer deeds. Legally binding." Victor's face drained of color. "I can pay," he stammered. "I just need time." "You have 24 hours, Ayla said. 24, he repeated, stunned. "If you don't repay the full amount," she continued calmly, "we seize your penthouse, your office equipment, and your remaining assets." For the first time, Victor realized she wasn't bluffing. The next 24 hours dragged him across Atlanta. Banks, partners, old contacts. Doors closed fast. By evening, even his phone stopped ringing. Back at the penthouse, Nina paced furiously. "You said we were fine," she snapped. "I just need time," Victor shouted back. But deep down, he knew. At exactly 10 the next morning, the doorbell rang. Victor opened it with trembling hands. Daniel Knox stood there, with 2 attorneys and a county officer. "Your deadline has passed," Daniel said. The officer began posting seizure notices. "This is our home," Nina cried. "Technically," the officer replied, "this property now stands as collateral." Victor tried one last plea. "Ayla, please," she wasn't there. She didn't need to be. Within an hour, Victor and Nina were escorted out, dragging suitcases behind them. On the sidewalk, Victor stared at his reflection in the glass tower he once owned. Only now did he understand the cost of taking everything from someone who had nothing left to lose. 2 weeks after the penthouse seizure, Ayla Morgan sat at the long conference table inside the Cascade Mansion. Afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, spilling across blueprints, financial reports, and updated land assessments neatly arranged in front of her. Daniel Knox stood beside her, reviewing the final documents. "All assets from coal development have been processed," he said. "The penthouse is cleared. Office equipment sold. Funds transferred. Victor Hale has no remaining holdings tied to the company." Ayla nodded slowly. She didn't feel triumph. She felt completion. A chapter that should have closed years ago was finally finished. "What would you like to do with the penthouse keys?" Daniel asked, placing them on the table. Ayla tapped her finger once, thoughtful. "Sell everything inside," she said. "The furniture. The appliances. Everything he left behind." Daniel made a note. "And the unit itself?" Ayla paused. "Don't sell it," she said. "Give the keys to Samuel Whitman at Morgan Federal Bank. Tell him to offer it as a staff reward, preferably to someone who works hard without recognition." Daniel looked up, surprised. "Lucas would lose his mind," he said. Ayla allowed a small smile. "He was the first person who treated me with dignity on the worst day of my life. That matters." With that settled, Daniel opened a new folder and slid it across the table. "The next phase," he said. The blueprint showed rows of modest, modern homes. A small medical clinic. Walking paths between pecan groves. "This is what I want," Ayla said. "Homes for the workers on our farmland. Affordable. Stable. She turned the page. Some of these families were nearly ruined by Victor's unpaid contracts. They kept his business alive while he stalled their paychecks. It's time someone supports them. Daniel studied her carefully. This isn't revenge anymore, he said. No, Ayla replied. This is repair. She flipped to the next design. A training center. Classrooms. Small business labs. The Morgan Academy, Ayla said softly. For farmers, tradespeople, and anyone who needs a second chance. Daniel closed the folder with a nod. You're building more than a company. I'm building what I needed, Ayla said. A place where people don't lose everything just because they trusted the wrong person. Outside the window, the farmland stretched endlessly, green and steady beneath the late afternoon sky. Her father had called it an anchor. Now she understood. Anchors weren't just meant to hold you in place. Sometimes, they were where you rebuilt everything. 1 year after the night Ayla Morgan stood on a quiet Atlanta sidewalk with $9 in her wallet and a worn-out debit card, everything around her had changed. The farmland her father left behind was no longer silent or forgotten. It was alive. Rows of pecan and peach trees stretched across the land, tended by workers who now owned stable homes just beyond the fields. Children rode bikes along clean walking paths. Families gathered in the evenings on porches that didn't feel temporary or fragile. At the center of it all stood the Morgan Academy. Ayla watched as students entered the building carrying notebooks, tool kits, and quiet determination. Farmers learning modern techniques. Small business owners attending evening classes. People who had once been one bad month away from losing everything now had something solid beneath their feet. The land felt like it had finally exhaled. That afternoon, Ayla climbed the small hill overlooking the fields, the same hill where her father, Edward Morgan, once stood with her years ago. Back then, she had been young, impatient, convinced life would unfold exactly as planned. Life isn't always fair, he had told her. But you'll always have a way forward. Daniel Knox joined her quietly, hands in his pockets, watching the wind ripple through the trees. You did it, he said. We did it, Ayla corrected gently. And so did everyone who believed in this land long before I understood its value. Daniel nodded. Most people who lose everything stay trapped in that moment, he said. You walked through it. Ayla looked out across the homes, the academy, the clinic, and the endless green beyond. I learned something, she said softly. Losing everything isn't the end. Daniel waited. It's a doorway, she continued. And sometimes the people who try to break you are the very ones who push you into your purpose. The sun dipped lower, painting the fields in warm gold. Ayla breathed in the southern air, steady, grounded, real. If you're listening to this story, she thought, remember this, you are allowed to start over. You are allowed to rise again. And you are allowed to build a life stronger than anything someone tried to take from you. She turned and walked back down the hill, not as someone who had survived betrayal, but as someone who had transformed it into legacy. Her father had called this land an anchor. But now she knew the truth. Anchors weren't only meant to keep you from sinking. Sometimes, they were the foundation on which you built an entire kingdom.